Hey everyone, just before we get to this episode, do you want to start, grow, or monetize your podcast but feel stuck or overwhelmed? Join the Podcast Lab, a monthly membership with live training, templates, support, and a community to help you launch and grow with confidence. Get clarity, stay consistent, and finally build the podcast you've been dreaming of. Join the Podcast Lab today and take your next bold step. The link is in the description to join. Now, let's get into this episode.
So here's a little hack for those who are podcasters. And my downloads went up by 30% overnight. I love that you assumed that I was smart enough to do research. I did not do research, though I would recommend people do such. Quality. If your artwork looks homemade, they're going to assume that your content sounds homemade. 80% of our decisions we make with our eyeballs. I actually have a formula I follow to keep people moving through the episode. And so I can share that if you want.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast today. I'm so glad that you're here. We got a really good episode for you today. I spoke with Jen Samuel, and she is the host of the podcast called Java with Jen. And she shares how she blends faith, leadership, and everyday wisdom into conversations that both minister and mentor. So this was a powerful conversation, and she is a podcasting expert. So she dropped some really, really wonderful strategies and tips that we can apply into our podcast to take it to that next level. So make sure that you have your pen and paper beside you or your notes app open on your phone, and make sure you take some notes. And don't just take the notes, make sure you put some action behind them to do the things that Jen recommended in this episode today. And just before we get into this episode, I want to let you know about my new podcasting ebook. It's free and you can download it using the link in the description of this episode. And because I've spoken to so many podcasters over the years, I've collected so much wisdom and insight, and I've placed it all in this book. So if you are ready to start your podcast today, you can download this book and follow the blueprint. It's a step-by-step guide of things that you should do in order to start your podcast and start making an impact with your message. No more excuses, no more procrastination, no more confusion. Download the ebook and you'll be able to follow the step-by-step guide to launch your podcast. You can download it by clicking the link in the description. So I'm not talking anymore. Let's get into this episode. It was a blast and you're going to learn a lot. So let's get into it right now. Let me ask you this question straight off the bat. What is the most impactful or important thing that has happened to you as a result of podcasting?
Oh my gosh, everything. Oh my gosh, everything. Okay, my favorite thing about being a podcaster is being able to sit down. I'm sure you can relate. Sit down with these people who are experts, or even people who have been some of my heroes of the faith, or, of different areas of life, and just being able to finally pick their brain. So for example, Sean Bowles is someone that I have followed for years, read all of his books, love him. And long story short, I had pitched myself to be on his show, which was definitely felt like a wild, we'll see if this actually takes kind of thing. But he actually said yes, surprised the crap out of me, and said yes. And then after that, he invited me to come back and coach his entrepreneurs on podcasting and how that's a way to get your voice out. So then there was two things. And then I invited him on my show, where I was finally able to sit with him for an hour and just ask him all the questions I've ever wanted to ask him. And so I've been on calls now with people. I've been in the rooms with people that I never would have had the opportunity to. So I've been in 2 private meetings now with Adam Curry, who is the pod father, the original podcaster. And I never would have had the opportunity to meet these kind of people. And so that has by far been my favorite thing, the way that it has elevated the type of rooms that I'm in, simply because podcasting is such a narrow little niche, and it gives you quite a lot of back doors to go in.
Oh, wonderful. So podcasting has opened up doors and brought relationships into your life that has helped you dramatically. That is such an amazing thing that podcasting has done. And I'm so glad that you're here with us to share some of those things that you have learned since you became a podcaster. Now, so your podcast is called Java with Jen, and you've been podcasting since 2017, was it? I think that's when your first episode was published. And I did listen I went back and I listened to it.
Gosh.
We're going to talk about it.
Oh, no.
I think that was such a amazing first episode that you did with your son, Shiloh.
Oh,
It was such an amazing episode. So I have my son and my wife, they read the intro for this podcast for season number 1 of this podcast. And I find it so amazing that you were able to bring your son on that first episode. I guess you were just kind of testing your equipment, or what was the thought process when you started the podcast?
Oh my gosh. Okay, there's a whole story. Do you want the whole story?
Absolutely.
You want the short version? Okay. So growing up, I grew up a missionary kid. I grew up as a Christian in the church. Grew up as a missionary kid. When I was around 14, I had an encounter with God where I felt like he was calling me into ministry. And so from there, I just had these dreams in my heart of preaching and getting in front of crowds and teaching people the word of God. And so when I was in high school, I had leaders around me who very much cultivated that inside of me. When I was 19, I spoke in a stadium in Indianapolis in front of 85,000 teenagers. When I was 16, I spoke in the Diamondbacks Stadium in my city for the National Day of Prayer. When I was 17, I flew to Chicago and did some small group leader trainings there at one of the largest youth groups in the nation. And so the Lord was so sweet to create these nurturing moments to really encourage those gifts. Well, ironically, when I grew up and became a wife, I married a pastor. But I moved to Southeast Texas, and I wasn't prepared for the culture here that is not overtly women can't preach, but kind of subconsciously is women can't preach. I think it's like old mindsets that have kind of trickled through the culture. And so even though I was marrying a pastor, I had no opportunities to preach and teach and use my gifts. And so for about 10 or 12 years, I just cried. I mean, not constant. Obviously, I wasn't a sad, mopey person the whole time, but I cried often because, when you have a voice and you want to use it, if you're a singer and you have nowhere to sing, you just feel like the thing that's been given to you to bless the world has no outlet. And that's a very frustrating feeling. And so I just felt like I had no outlet. And so for a short period of time, I believed a lie, which was that people could stand in the way of me doing what I was built for. And after a while, I realized, you know what? I don't think that can be true, because at the end of my life, and this is what I believe, is that I'm going to stand before God and I'm going to give an account for my life. And he's going to say, what did you do with what I gave you to serve the world with? And I'm not going to be able to blame anyone. I'm not going to be able to make excuses. I'm not going to be able to point any fingers. It is going to be on me. What did I do? And I have to take responsibility. And so I realized then it's my job to, if doors aren't opening and opportunities aren't coming and invitations aren't coming, then I've got to figure out a way to develop my gifts. And so I decided to do a podcast because I thought that sounded like a nice, quiet, little delicate, kind of in the corner, hidden away from everyone way that I could develop myself. And now it's listened to in 114 countries, and it's a top 1% globally ranked show, so I'm not really hiding in the corner anymore. But it definitely became, I think, honestly, God could have opened doors for me. And I think he wanted me to pivot and wanted me to look at podcasting because it wasn't a thing when I was young. I never would have dreamed about being a podcaster because when I was young, it wasn't a thing. So I think, it worked out that I landed in podcasting, and now it has become, now we're senior pastors and I am able to preach. And so it's come very full circle.
Wonderful. Wow. I love that. And you're right. We all have gifts and talents. My story, or one of my life verses, is the parable of the talents, Matthew 25, right? Literally, I'm the servant who was given one talent, right? Like, that's how I feel like my life was. I could sing just a little bit. This is way back like in 2005 when I joined the choir. And because I invested in that ability to sing, I learned how to I taught myself how to play the piano. I was faithful with that one gift of singing. More was given to me. I learned how to play the piano. Someone blessed me with a guitar. I learned how to play the guitar. I started to evolve and grow in singing, and I was leading worship, and I'm still singing right now in my church. And I started to produce write songs and produce music as a result of all of this. Everything is just being built on the other one because I was faithful with what I had. And then, when I had this idea to start a podcast, I procrastinated so much. And I was just like, you know what? I have all of the equipment. I was producing music. I had the microphones, had the computers, had everything. What's the excuse? Let's just make it happen. Mm-hmm. Because like you said, I'm going to have to give an account for everything that I did or didn't do, right? And what's the excuse I'm going to give, right? So I just threw out procrastination and I made it happen. And I think like that, just building on one another. So not making an excuse for myself at the beginning of that journey actually has led me to everything that I've done with regards to music, with regards to everything about me, including podcasting. It has just like open the doors. And like you mentioned in the first question that you answered about the relationships that has brought, like I've met such wonderful people as a result of podcasting that are, I would consider them like friends right now. And it's not that I've seen them like face to face yet. Like we've, met like this, but we are just like so connected online that it's just like we're friends, and it's just such an awesome feeling what podcasting can do, so that's just my story of just to piggyback on something that you just mentioned. So I hope that encourages you or anyone else out there that you keep being faithful with what you're doing. And just remember that you're going to have to give an account for what's in you. So if God has put something in your heart to get out there to the world, you put the work in and you do it and you make it happen. And, you're going to hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant, right? Because that's what we all want to hear.
I love that you mentioned that parable because that's one that I talk about often. And for those who are unfamiliar with the parable, it's the story of this manager who had 3 servants and he gave each of them a certain amount of money and he was going to leave town. And each of them was given the amount that was, what did it say, to the degree of their maturity, their ability to handle it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so one of them received 1. There's 2 versions of the story in the Bible, but there's one of them received 1, one received 3, one received 5. Another version, it was like 1, 5, and 10. And so, but the point of the story is that the one who received the least amount was afraid and he let fear run his decisions and he went and buried the talents so that he could just return it to the master because whatever his fears were, he wasn't confident he could actually steward it well. Mm-hmm. The other 2 went and they must have been businessmen because they multiplied it. They doubled it, right? So they took risk. They were creative. They thought outside the box and they multiplied what they had been given. So when the master came back, the 2 that multiplied what they had been given, he said, you have been faithful. But to the one who buried it and only returned it, he said, you were wicked and unfaithful. And he took what he had given him and gave it to the others. And so what I took from that is that not only do I have a responsibility to do something with my gifts, but I have a responsibility to multiply my gifts.
Absolutely.
Like it's not enough to just give back what was given to me. I have to actually multiply it into people. And so with podcasting, I am multiplying whatever my gifts are. Apparently, I'm a good interviewer is what I've heard from my guests. And so if that's a talent, then, I'm multiplying that into my listeners or whatever wisdom and insight the Lord's given me from scripture. I'm giving that to my listeners. But now I coach podcasters. So I'm multiplying what I've learned into the lives of other people. And I run a podcast network where I continue to mentor them and help them grow, And so, but that wasn't my original plan. It's kind of like those were happy accidents that came along the way as me answering questions and solving problems, that it kind of evolved into that very naturally. But I think when you are pursuing serving people with what's inside of you, which I think we are built to do that. It's kind of a natural desire. Then the multiplication happens. So, okay, I'm sorry. We're having church on your podcast this morning.
That's okay. I love it. Yeah. And I echo those sentiments like 100%. I'm that one that had 1, but instead of burying mine, I multiplied it.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So let's, so your podcast, can you mentioned it a little bit, open up your podcast, let us know what it's about, types of things that you talk about, because there might be people who are listening to this podcast. Well, I'm sure there are people that are listening to this podcast that might be curious to know what your podcast is about. Can you give us a little introduction about what your podcast is about?
Sure. So my podcast has kind of evolved over time. When I first got started, of course, I had no idea what the heck I was doing. I launched my podcast and I think I did that first episode. And then our house flooded in Hurricane Harvey. We had 10 feet of water in our home. We lost everything just after we had built our home. And so it was about a year before I could come back to podcasting. And so it definitely took me probably 3 years to get my footing. But my show is faith-based. It's Java with Jen, hearing God's voice for everyday life. So here's a little hack for those who are podcasters. It was just called Java with Jen for like 3 years or 4 years or seasons maybe. And then around season 4, I added the subtitle, Hearing God's Voice for Everyday Life. And my downloads went up by 30% overnight. And it's because I added a subtitle with keywords in it. Because it always drove me crazy that Java with Jen didn't tell them what the heck they were going to get when they came to my show. So when I added that subtitle, and now if you go to my show, you'll see there's actually keywords tagged on even after my subtitle. And it's because I'm just trying to maximize people finding my show, you know? And it does. That's one of the keys that helps with downloads.
Okay, so just before you continue, let me just make sure that I summarize that just in case anyone missed it. So you started your podcast. It was just called Java with Jen. But then you realized that you needed to optimize the title by taking advantage of the keywords. So you did some research and you added specific keywords to the title of your podcast. And you saw an increase in download because those keywords, you did some research and you found out that those words were something that people were searching regularly, and it helped the downloads on your podcast increase from that moment forward. So you saw a change in the analytics.
I love that you assumed that I was smart enough to do research. I did not do research, though I would recommend people do such. I actually just thought to myself, if I could say in one little phrase what the vibe of my show is, I mean, there was kind of more to it as far as like me asking myself, what's the one thing I want people to walk away with from my show, or the one thing I need to do with my life, and that is teach people how to hear God's voice. So in my show episodes, it's not like every episode we sit down and break down how to hear God's voice, because you can only kick that barrel down the road for so long. You know, it's pretty simple. Right. But the people that I have on the show, I love for them to share how in their journey they heard the Lord's voice and what that looked like, how it impacted their story. And then there are some episodes I have where I'm actually teaching theologically or from scripture or practically how to do that. So, but anyways, yes, I do recommend people do research on SEO, but I just wasn't that smart yet when I did that.
Yeah, but it worked. So that's good.
It worked. I guessed right, apparently.
Yeah, and I think, see, this is what I love, because there's a lot of people who are listening who are newer podcasters, and I want to kind of shorten that learning curve to success for them. Yeah. So this is something that they can apply right away. So it took you some time to make this adjustment. I'm thinking about my podcast title. It's just called I Made a Podcast. Maybe I should put, some a subtitle in there just to maybe see if it does anything with the downloads as well. So that's something that I'm going to take away and do some research in as well to see if I need to make some changes to see if it makes a difference. Now, you also talked about a podcast network. Can you let us know a little bit about that?
Yeah. So when I started coaching podcasters, the way that came about was when my show started hitting like top 10% globally, top 5% globally, the people around me who were kind of like, oh, that's cute. Jen has a podcast. Of course, I'll go listen. You know, it was friends and family kind of thing. But once they started seeing I was getting some really legitimate guests on my show and I was hitting global rankings, they kind of were like, oh, it's actually a thing over there. You know, so they started asking for help. People that wanted to start a show, they were like, hey, could you help me? So I helped about a half a dozen people. And then I had about another half a dozen that were still asking for some help. And I realized this is very time consuming and I need to make some money. So let's put the two together and let's make a mastermind. So I created a mastermind and I had about 12 people in it. I charged basically peanuts for it. It was very, very inexpensive just because I knew I was learning and they were my guinea pigs. And so, but that first round was so successful that we were all kind of surprised, honestly. And they all created shows and they all did a great job, but we all became a little family. And at the end, they had worked very hard and learned a whole lot, created their podcast, but they realized they're like, there's still so much to learn. We don't want to be done. Do you have a graduate program? And I was like, well, I can't justify charging you guys a whole lot of money again because you just paid me some money and you still aren't making money from your shows yet. So I created a very low ticket entry point and created my podcast network. And so I still coach them once a month instead of every week. And I'll bring on other experts. Like I think last month I brought on a writing expert and she taught them how to turn their podcast into a book. And so because a lot of podcasters turn into authors and vice versa. And so and Adam Curry, the father of podcasting, he is going to be coming on my podcast network in a few months to talk about the platform that I've collaborated with him on. And so I try to bring people on, and then of course I teach my students, and then we have a great community where they support each other, share their wins, ask each other questions, brainstorm together, go on each other's shows, promote each other's shows, all that. So it meets quite a few needs, and it's a wonderful community. I love it.
That's awesome. So it's a monthly membership that they pay to stay in this network. And every month there's an expert that comes in and teaches and gives them something to help them to get a little bit better at podcasting. 100%. Right?
Yeah. The focus is pretty much growth and monetization once they're in the network.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that idea. That's a great idea. And I hope, okay, so anyone else out there listening, I'm going to encourage you to, check out Jen's network, her podcast network. I'm going to put links for her socials in the bio, or in the description of this episode, so you can connect with her. Who knows? There might be someone else that wants to join your network. Maybe they are faith-based. Maybe they do a lot of things like you're doing with your podcast, and they would probably be a good fit for you. So, I hope that they listen and, connect with you from that perspective.
Absolutely.
Now, how do you find guests for your podcast? Because you do an interview-based podcast, and I know you do like a solo podcasts or solo episodes by yourself, but you do also interview people. How do you find guests for your podcast?
Yeah. So in the beginning, I did a lot more solo episodes because I was gaining traction and I didn't know how to find guests. So it was a lot of me and then people that I knew having them on the show, so it's definitely like scaled over time. There was a point when I guess my show had hit top 1% globally. And that's when I found myself being pursued by PR firms. And so right now, Frontgate Media, Destiny Publishing, Destiny Books, and then Chosen Books. I reached out to Destiny and Chosen, and because I know they publish authors, and I was like, your authors probably go on podcast tours, so let me be on the short list and send your authors to me. And so that became a really great way to get some of my more top tier guests. Nice. And then Frontgate Media has also sent me quite a few. So that kind of comes as you've grown a bit. And I do get pitched by random companies, random times. And so I'm at the point where I have to tell some people no and some people yes, and, weed it out. But when I was smaller and I was looking for guests from the front end, there is a very awesome Facebook group called Need a Guest. And I actually made one post in that group as a demonstration for my podcast network students. I was like, here's how y'all can get guests on your show. And I literally did it in the class. Not really. I'd never posted in that group before. And I had no idea it was going to be such a success. And so I just made this post. I was just walking them through, hey, introduce yourself briefly, let people know what your show is about, let them know what you're looking for, give some ideas of topics that you're looking for, include a picture with your face because it builds trust. People love seeing the human face. It's very personable. And then let people comment. And literally 24 hours later, there was 140 comments of people wanting to be on my show. I had to turn off the comments because I was like, I can't follow up with this. That's a lot of people. So I ended up booking probably 40 people from that. So I had almost a year's worth of content. And so between that post, and I made some really great friends from that group. Like some of the people I met that came on my show there have become best friends. I've stayed at their homes. Like they've come on my show. I mean, it was amazing. So between that and then Frontgate Media, Destiny Books, and Chosen Books, I have so many guests now that I rarely can actually do a solo episode anymore.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. But, you did bring up a point, and I hear this a lot from other podcasters who are just starting out. Where do you find guests from? Right. Yeah. So that group, Need a Guest, I think I'm part of that group as well. Maybe that's where I met you from. I don't know. but I'm part of that group as well. And I too put a post in that group and I got flooded with people. It's a really good place to connect. I think when it comes to social media, I feel like, there are so many different things, so many different apps out there, and we need to know what each one of these apps does best. Yeah. When it comes to connecting with people, I think Facebook is really good at connecting people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
So if you are looking for a guest for your podcast and you're just starting out, join some of these Facebook groups or join, topic specific groups that's related to your podcast and engage with those people. Find some of the experts in those groups and engage, and, hopefully a relationship can start and you can, find people to bring onto your podcast. Cause I think I've heard a lot of people saying that's a challenge. How do I find people to, come on my podcast if I'm just starting out? I don't have a big name. Anna, you also mentioned, before I continue, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. Okay, a couple of basic pro tips when it comes to that though.
Yeah,
okay,
sure.
First of all, I got 140 comments, but I'm not going to say that's how, because I think one of my students posted in there and they didn't have nearly the social proof that I had. And so people weren't as eager to jump on their show. I think they got maybe a few. So just keep in mind, I was able to put in there, I've had Sean Bowles on my show. I've had I'm a top 1%. So those kind of things made it more appealing to people. So A, put your social proof in there. But B, if you're newer and smaller, don't be discouraged. Just work with it. You just build on what you can build on. The other things are, do not put your calendar link in there directly, because you will need to filter the people that end up in the comments. There were some people that got in my comments. They're like, oh, you should have me. But they told me nothing about themselves. They didn't tell me what kind of expertise they had. They didn't make any suggestions on topics. I was like, I'm not going to do all the work just to have you on my show. You need to sell yourself to me, Right. And so if you're going to do that, if you're trying to get on someone else's show, the more work you can do in suggesting, here's what I could talk about if I come on your show, here's the value I could add to your show, then that's very important in the pitching process. And so that's what I looked for in the comments. And that's part of what made it easier to rule people out. And then I would send them a DM with my calendar link. That way I only had high value interviews getting on my calendar.
Excellent. See, that advice right there is gold. This is like a masterclass that you're giving us here. So like you, I have a Google form. So if anyone, I remember I posted, requests for people to come on my podcast, and those who were interested, I gave them the form to fill out where I can then just do my research and figure out who they were. I go and I listen to their podcasts. And if their podcasts, not to sound mean, but if it sounds like trash, or if they are just too new to have anything of value to share on my platform, because I want to speak to podcasters who have experience and can share something that they've learned, right? If they don't meet those criteria, then, I'll put them on another list where I would call them back or reach out to them in a year or so, after they got some more episodes underneath their belt. Right. Yeah. But yes, that advice that you gave right there is absolutely valuable. Put your social proof. But if you don't have it, don't allow that to discourage you. And also don't put the link to your calendar, put a link to collect their information so that they can share what value they bring to what value they will bring to your podcast. Absolute gold advice. Jen, you're killing it today. You're killing it. Oh my gosh.
Thanks, Chris.
Listen, let's talk about as a podcaster. So you've been in this for since 2017, you want to say? Is that about there when you started?
Seven to 8 years. Yeah.
Right. What were some of the trends, or what has changed the most that you've seen in podcasting since you got in the game?
The introduction of AI.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
100%. I mean, honestly, the bones, the structural basics are still pretty much all there. You've got to have good audio. Your artwork needs to be quality. If your artwork looks homemade, they're going to assume that your content sounds homemade, right? And so your artwork, 80% of our decisions we make with our eyeballs. And so 80% of the battle of getting them to click play happens with your artwork and your title. And so that's very, very important. And so, those pillars have always been there, bringing good content that pulls people in from the beginning and keeps them engaged through the end. And so I actually have a formula I follow for the structure of my episodes to keep people moving through the episode. And so I can share that if you want. I felt like I landed on a gold mine when I figured it out. But
please do share.
Okay. So I was on a sales call, she's trying to get me to sign up in her program, but she was offering value at the same time. And she just casually mentioned this phrase, the 7 compulsory beliefs. And I had never heard of it, but in the context of sales, the 7 compulsory beliefs are the stages that your brain goes through or the questions you're subconsciously asking before you're compelled to take action or to buy the product. And so when it comes to preaching and communicating, the most valuable tools I have ever found has not been preaching courses. It has been marketing courses, because the goal of marketing is to get people to listen fast, listen fully, and take action on what you're selling or what you're teaching, right? And so I did some digging, thank you, ChatGPT, with AI, and found out about the 7 compulsory beliefs. And I use those to actually structure my episodes now. So let's say I have a guest coming on and I've worked up some questions and they're kind of just all over the place. I will then drop those questions in ChatGPT and I will say, I need you to restructure these questions in the order of the 7 compulsory beliefs so that my listener's brain is pulled through the conversation in a very natural flow that keeps them engaged to where they'll take action at the end. And so then I structure those questions so that I'm taking their brain on a journey and they don't want to stop listening. Now, that doesn't mean I have 100% retention rate or listen through rate, but I know it helps. And so I know whenever I've preached one message following this structure, and I had both teenagers and grandparents telling me it was the best message they've heard in their lives. And it was around the election. You know, it was about politics. And so I was like, okay, there is something to this. So there's your money-making free hack. And you can structure your emails that way, your sales emails, or you can structure captions for your social media that way. 7 compulsory beliefs is a gold mine.
Wow. Okay. My glasses are fogging up here. You're okay, good. This is great.
Don't cry, Chris. Don't cry.
No, I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to cry. But this is gold. Jen, you are killing it. You are killing it. This is, you know what? I want to encourage everybody to go and listen to your podcast. Join your podcast network, all the podcasters out there. Because I'm sure that this is something that you would touch on in your podcast network on a monthly basis, whatever the topic is. So I want to encourage everyone to, if you want to connect with Jen, again, links are in the bio and links are down below in the description. Here I am talking to you live right now. And I kind of just want to say, okay, thanks, Jen. Bye. I want to go away and just do some homework and just figure some stuff out, because you've given us at least 4 very specific actionable things that we can do to get better at podcasting. At least 4, very clear, specific things, and other things through your journey. There's other things I'm sure people can learn as well. But Jen, you're killing it so far. I'm blown away. So I'm really glad that you're here. I don't even know where to go, because you talked about the 7, the structure of how you structure your episodes, and I know I don't structure my questions that way. So I'm probably
That's okay. You're doing great. Don't say, listen, you're great. You're great. But I do have a tip. If podcasters want to start making money from their shows quickly and they don't have a program yet or whatever, and this is actually something I'm going to teach my podcasters this Sunday on our network call. Again, another thing I stumbled upon. So having a calendar link is so valuable for getting people on. It's very professional. It's a great way to collect information, whatever. It's apparently also a great way to collect monies. So I stumbled upon this calendar tool called, everyone uses Calendly, and I used to use Calendly, and I stopped once they stopped integrating with iPhone calendars on the free plan. Mm-hmm. So I went to cal.com, CAL.com, and on the free plan, because I am all about it, I'm not going to pay for it unless I really, really, really have to, right? That's overhead needs to stay low. Let's keep the overhead low. So cal.com integrates with Stripe. And so they have the ability, you can build multiple calendars on cal.com on the free version. And so you can build a calendar that, let's say it's a 60-minute coaching call, because if you're a podcaster, you have an expertise and your listeners probably want a way to connect with you further. And so what you could do is make a commercial letting people know if you would like to get on a one-on-one coaching call with me, or a mentoring call, whatever you want to call it, a mentoring call with me. I actually have that available. You can grab it down below, grab my calendar, and then there's just a simple fee attached, and then I will be happy to spend an hour with you, and you can ask me any questions you want, whatever. You can create a commercial for your podcast, and then you put the cal.com, you attach it to Stripe with the integration they provide, and then you can just set it at whatever rate you want to do, $45 an hour, $90 an hour, whatever you want to do. And then just start running commercials. And then when people you don't even have to really prepare ahead of time. They're just asking for your time to pick your brain. And I came up with that idea because I literally had a listener reach out to me asking, do you mentor people? Can I pay you to mentor me? And I was like, sure, here's my link. So she paid $75 to get an hour of my time. And I just gave her all the wisdom I could. I prayed with her at the end. And she was so appreciative, and I'm like, heck yes, if I could pay $50 to get on the phone with someone that I admire and have been following, Amy Porterfield, I would pay it, And so you can do that in 20 minutes. You can go set that up, put a commercial in your podcast, and then you can start making money. Now you are trading money for time with that one, so there is a cap on it, but it's a great way to start. It's a really great way to start.
Yeah. And I think a lot of podcasters, in the back of their head when they start, they think about sponsorships. They think about, because we hear the numbers, right, of how much people are actually making with their podcasts, the big podcasters, Joe Rogan's, all these big guys. And they have that in the back of their head. One day I'm going to be able to get a sponsor on my podcast, and they never get there. Yeah. But you could sponsor your own podcast because you have an expertise. Even if, so you're talking, your expertise is podcasting. You can, like you said, put a link and coach somebody or mentor someone with regards to podcasting. But say, for example, if you are a personal trainer, a fitness trainer, and you talk about, meal prep and how to do it properly on your podcast, there's another opportunity for you to sponsor your own podcast and bring in clients or mentor clients when it comes to their fitness and their meal prep. These are all ways that I think we need to get out of that mindset of just trying to find the big sponsorships, right? They might come, and if they do, glory to God if they do come. But we just need to take it down a little bit to another level where we could just see how can we give value to people and bring in some revenue with what we already know, because chances are we know so much that other people out there probably don't know yet and are willing to pay us for that knowledge. Yeah. Right. So sponsor your own podcast. That's what I say.
Sponsor your own 100%, because I've had sponsors and they'll pay me, $300 to put a commercial in 4 episodes or whatever, maybe $900 for 3, but whatever it is. And, the bigger ones are helpful. But you get to keep 100%. Like the affiliate commissions, rarely are those going to pay you big money, but you keep 100% of what comes in from you. And if you start getting people on calls, you start noticing patterns and questions they're asking. That is market information of what kind of products you can create, a digital course, an ebook, a whatever, mentoring program, a membership, whatever. And then from there, you could even take some of the calls and just record the advice you're giving and turn that into a little digital course or even a freebie that you can offer to your listeners to grow your email list. So there's so many things that you can do with once you just step out there and start the ball rolling, it snowballs, man.
Jen, there's a level of wisdom that you're sharing right now that is not earthly. It's just flowing right now off of you. So we're about to wrap up. But again, I want to encourage everyone to connect with Jen. Listen to her podcast, join her podcast network if you feel connected to her from the things that she shared. Let me ask you this final question, Jen. You've knocked it out of the park. You've scored touchdowns in this episode. You've raised the bar when it comes to, the guest that I interview. The next person that I interview, man, he better come good, But let's end with this one question. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you, or what is your last piece of insight or wisdom that you have for everyone listening?
Sure. There's 2 parts to my answer. One thing, you didn't ask me about my freebies, so let me do that in a second. But before I get there, for anyone who's listening, all you podcasters, I want to encourage you, don't watch downloads for your marker of am I successful or not? Because the downloads are a roller coaster. 1 week, I still have weeks where my downloads are very low and it can be discouraging. But what I watch is my global ranking and how many countries I'm being listened to in. And so your platform, because those are they steadily move upward, right? Those aren't going to move downward. Or also where you're charting. If you're charting in countries, that's a great way too. And so those are the 3 metrics I watch to see if my show is growing. And I set goals for those. And so when I've set goals for how many countries I'm listened to in, it just blows me away when it bypasses that. So I'm at 114 now. That's awesome. I want to reach 125, And so I just keep setting the goal a little bit further, and then my brain looks for ways to achieve it. So don't let the downloads discourage you. Do everything that you do a little bit scared. If you're not a little bit scared, it's probably not stretching you and probably not going to grow you. So do it a little bit scared. Everything I've done a little bit scared. But then the freebie I have for you is actually, it was a coaching call. It was the first coaching call of my mastermind. It's the Getting Started call. And so in it, I talk about both apps, software, and attitude that's going to help you go the distance in podcasting. So for those who are maybe not started yet, and they're like, I don't know where to start, I'm kind of overwhelmed at the idea, this is a great one to listen to. Even if you have a podcast already, you'll probably still want to listen to this because there's going to be some tools in there that I use that maybe you don't, that will add some value to you. And so that's a freebie. It's an hour-long coaching call that I used to charge money for. So I'd be happy to give it to your audience. We'll put the link in the show notes for that.
Absolutely, we will. Jen, thank you so much.
Cracking me up, Chris.
This has been awesome. I kind of have an expectation of what my guests are going to share on the podcast. And I expected, a lot from you because your podcast is doing great. I listened to a lot of episodes that you've released, but you just set the bar so high. You've killed it. And I got a lot to do.
Oh, good.
You gave me a lot of actionable, specific things. So for everyone else listening, please go and check out Jen's podcast. It's Java with Jen. Join her podcast network. What was the name of the podcast network again?
Oh, yes. It's called Imagine Media Podcast Network. I do not have a website for it yet. And so I will put the landing page. I just have a landing page for it at the moment. And so I'll give you the link so they can just click right into it.
Excellent. Yeah. And then you'll give me the link for the freebie as well, that coaching call that you recorded, so that we can learn those 3 things. I am so full. I don't need to do anything else for the rest of the day except for just work on some of the things that you talked about. Yeah. Jen, this has been great. Thank you so much for being on I Made a Podcast. I can't wait to release this to everybody so that they can listen to it and learn from some of the things that you have shared in this episode. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being on the podcast today.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a gift.